We're going to take a closer look at capitalism and income inequality. I'm joined by Diana Furchtgott-Roth, Senior Fellow at the Manhattan Institute, and Christy Setzer, President of New Heights Communication. Welcome to both of you.
Great to be with you.
Yes.
Some fascinating comments. I just want to get your reaction first from what the Pope said, because the way I read the quote is that he's basically saying that capitalism can't solve the problem of income inequality. But I do want to get your comments first, Diana.
Well, I think he was saying unfettered capitalism. First of all, we don't have unfettered capitalism here in the United States. We have a substantial amount of taxes paid by the top income group, a substantial amount of transfers going to the bottom income group. And when you take that into account, inequality really hasn't changed on a per-person basis that much over the past 25 years.
Christy, I suspect you might have a slightly different opinion on that.
I sure do. I think the Pope was being very clear. He was coming out against trickle-down economics. And I have to say, I certainly agree. Look, this is a story that's been peddled for so long by the right that we actually have a lot of evidence to see whether or not it's a true story, and it's not. We had some of our highest top tax rates in the 1950s when we also had very strong economic growth. During the 80s, during the Reagan years, obviously we had some of the lowest top tax rates. That was followed by a recession and negative growth. So there's clearly not really a correlation there.
I want to point something out, because there are a lot of countries in the world. Many are free markets, many of them embrace capitalism, but there's different forms of capitalism. Is all capitalism created equal, and how should we judge capitalism in itself? We look at places in Europe where they borderline on socialism, and we look at the rest of the world where some countries are newly embracing capitalism. What's the definition of success for capitalism?
Well, I would say that it's capitalism that doesn't do, again, what the Pope was criticizing, which is create and grow inequality. And that's something, obviously, that the President was talking about today as well. And he was saying one of the things that we need to do is grow the middle class, because the big problem we have is, obviously we talk about this a lot, the rich keep getting richer, the poor keep getting poorer. What we really need to do is build out the middle, give people a higher minimum wage so that they can actually put more money back into the economy.
I'm going to get back to this in a second, because I do have something to say about minimum wage, but I want to finish this up. Capitalism, Diana, look, it creates wealth. There's no doubt about capitalism creating wealth. Here's the question, though. Does it and should it distribute wealth? And if so, how would or could it do that?
Well, if we look at China, China has seen both trickle down and trickle up. And we've seen the 4 major enterprise zones in China that have created many, many jobs. We've also seen that when farming and agriculture was allowed to be more private sector oriented, starting at the bottom, that has also created wealth. But I think that focusing on inequality is really the wrong measure. There's nothing wrong with increasing inequality. What we need is job mobility. If we have low wages at the bottom, so teens and unskilled workers can get jobs, that basically sets a floor on wages, and people at the top are going to continue to get better off, and that's what we want. We just want more job mobility. More mobility so people start at the bottom and grow to the top. If we wanted equality, we could all go to Cuba.
My producer, Bianca, and I were talking about this as we were preparing for this panel, and we brought up an interesting a point that I'd like to get your views on. It's really a yes-no question. Is capitalism in its form, especially in emerging markets, is it just this is part of the growing pains that you just have to go through, that there is going to be this income inequality early in its capitalism days? Or is there something else we're missing here, Christy?
No, there absolutely doesn't have to be growing inequality. I mean, we've seen it in our own history. You know, we've gone from a time where CEOs made 10 times more than their lowest
or more than
employees.
10 times.
Well, no, but what I'm saying is, and now they make something like 300 times, you know, their average, their lowest paid employee.
I mean, I have to stop you there. What's wrong with a CEO making 100 times, or what's the right number?
Well, I don't know what the right number is. I mean, maybe 10. Maybe 10 is the right number. Let's say it's even 20. Okay. But what we don't want is a situation where all of the wealth is going to the top and none of it is coming down to the 99%.
Diana is shaking her head. That means she needs to say something. But
first of all, not all the wealth is going to the top. Everybody is doing better than they were 10 and 20 years ago. But we also have people like Madonna, we have Lady Gaga, we have football
fair
stars.
enough. None of us are Madonna, Lady Gaga.
Right.
But let me ask you a
people
question.
who are paid more, and because that's what capitalism generates. It generates maybe unequal amounts.
Why in the last couple of years has it been this sort of, I don't want to say anti-capitalism, but there's been a great discussion about income inequality, and a lot of it is focused on capitalism. Diana?
Well, it's not just the past couple of years. There's always talk about income inequality. And there are people who say income inequality is negative, we need to do something about it. Those are people who want an excuse for raising taxes and redistributing income and taking money from
Don't get me started on taxes, because we could be here for an hour, but I do want...
But you have the top percentage, top 5% paying a very substantial portion of income taxes. And we have people flocking to the United States, the most unequal country in the world. They all want to come here. They don't want to go to Haiti. They don't want to go to Cuba.
At least you guys agree on that.
Sweden,
the president spoke,
where people are more equal.
The president spoke early today. He wants to increase the minimum wage. So now we're going to talk about if this, number one, is a solution, first of all. But before we get there, I want to ask you guys a very simple question. If there were the three of us, and each of us were to be paid $10 an hour, versus two of us paid $15 an hour and one person sits in the corner, which is better? Christy?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think it's kind of a straw man argument, but the idea is that...
It's a legitimate question.
I don't know if one is better than the other, if that's what we're talking about, because again, we're talking about 15 versus 5. That's, 3 times versus all of us making the same.
$15 an hour versus $10 an hour. 3 people and 2 people.
Sure. I would say either way is fine. But
Diana?
No, I would say everyone should have a chance at a job.
Yes,
and I would say there should not be actually any minimum wage, because the minimum wage we have right now, $7.25 an hour. You add Social Security, unemployment compensation, workers'
The president wants to raise the minimum wage. A lot of people agree with him. Is this going to help or hurt the economy, Christy?
It absolutely helps the economy. Look, it's not the entire solution. It is one part of many solutions that are all aimed, again, at building the middle class. When you look at the minimum wage that we have right now, $7.25 an hour, something like that, that extrapolates out to about less than $20,000 a year. I think you know that we can't live on that.
By the way, in fairness, many states set their own minimum wage in addition to the federal minimum wage. Diana, last word. Is this good or bad for the economy?
It would be bad for the economy because it means low-skilled workers, such as teens, low-skilled workers, cannot get their foot on the first rung of the career ladder. Fewer than 3% of American workers make minimum wage. Raising that minimum wage means that people with low skills and teenagers will not be able to get their foot in the door. And they won't be able to get that first job, which means they won't get the second job and the third job. And to have a law in the United States that says if you have skills under $10 an hour, you are not allowed to work. I mean, what does that say about our society? Preventing people with low skills from working.
All right. Diana, Christy, just for the record, my first job I made $3.75 an hour. Thank you very much. Great to have you on Biz Asia America. I wish we had more time.